And here we are. Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We are here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. And I have a little video here that I'm going to show you all before we get started about what we do here in the cannabis space as nurses. Here we go.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship, and what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine. And I'm excited to really bring this into light. There's a company called Cannabis that we're merging with, and we will now be doing global education.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers. All right, there we go, you all. We are the game changers here. Game changers in a lot of different respects when it comes to health and wellness. My name is Sherri Tutkus, and I'm the Vice President of Holistic Caring in the Green Nurse. I'm a cannabis nurse, patient advocate, activist, and a podcaster here to share the love of plant medicine and all of the benefits. I have three very special guests today, and it's going to be a really, really juicy podcast. So hang on to your seats. I'd like to introduce my business partner, Elisabeth Mack. She is CEO and founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse, CEO and founder, also the director of clinical affairs at Cannabis in Australia. Sorry about that botch up. And then we have Nique Pichette, has her master's in science. She's in the process of getting her doctorate. She's the cannabis nurse navigator and perception coach. She is a leader in the cannabis space as a 2-time breast cancer survivor, veteran of the United States Marine Corps, master prepared in nursing leadership, cannabis advocacy, and patient. She is a psychiatric nurse currently researching cannabis use disorder and will be graduating with her doctorate later this year. She will lead us today on a very, very powerful exercise on this show on perception in regards to our topic of conversation today, which is all about pride, LGBTQ, and cannabis. And our guest of honor tonight, I want to welcome Josh Crossney. He is the founder and former president and CEO of Cannabis Science Conference, which hosts and operates the world's largest scientific and medical cannabis event, the semi-annual Cannabis Science Conference. Cannabis Science Conference was recently acquired by MJL Life Science, the largest privately held healthcare media business in North America. Joss has joined the team as director of cannabis events and will continue his role planning and executing Cannabis Science conferences, as well as working to launch new cannabis events under the MJH umbrella. Josh is also a member of the LGBTQ community and a voice for equal rights worldwide. He often speaks out about diversity, inclusion in the cannabis industry, including equality of race, gender, sexual orientation, and economic social standing. Josh has a motto of collaboration, not competition, in this emerging industry where so much still needs to be accomplished. So I just want to say a big, huge welcome to the guests. Really, really excited to have you guys all here. There's going to be various topics that we're going to be discussing that may make people feel uncomfortable. However, as I said, and I usually say on a lot of all my other podcasts, we need to have these conversations because they're really, really important. The most difficult thing we have to do as human beings is to process emotion. And processing difficult emotions does not have to be icky. This is what the perception coach, Nurse Nique, taught me all about a couple of years ago. We can process positively. This can and will contribute to our healing and the healing of others. So like I had said earlier, Nique will be introducing positively processing perception, and we'll be doing an exercise to tie all of this together. And so now I want to go around and introduce each of you and have you just tell us, your name, your work in the cannabis space, and how perception, more importantly, how perception has impacted your work in the cannabis space. So I'm going to start with Josh.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I have so much love and respect for all three of you ladies, so it's an honor to be with you today. But as you mentioned, I'm Josh Crossney, and I work with the Cannabis Science Conference. I also do a couple other things in the industry. I'm very involved with pediatric advocacy, with groups like Canna Moms, Canna Kids, things like that. And, for me, I would say working in the cannabis science space over the years, doing this since 2015 really now, my goal in this space has really been to bridge the gaps between traditional science and the cannabis community. So especially in those early years, the perception of a cannabis consumer or the cannabis community or industry in general to traditional science, although, it's gotten better over the years. But I can remember way back when people were not really super interested to talk about it or learn about it from the traditional science side. And we've seen a big evolution there. But I think perception of our community and individuals that consume cannabis is such a big part of all of our walks of life in this industry. And I think we all kind of intersect there at some point down the line.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Thank you. I really appreciate everything that you do in the community. And I just want to say thank you for putting on the most amazing Cannabis Science Conference. I had the opportunity to attend, and wow, it was fascinating. So thank you for all you do.
My third one. It was amazing. Thank you.
Yes. No, it's an honor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So Nurse Nique, your work in the cannabis space and how perception has impacted your work.
Well, I developed the Cannabis Nurse Navigator in 2016 after my second battle with breast cancer and finding out that cannabis was in fact a medicine, because my perception of cannabis was that it was a street drug and it had no medicinal value. My perception changed over a period of time, and that started in 2013. In 2015, I met the CEO of the Cannabis Nurses Network, Nurse Heather, who developed a theory called the Lotus Theory. The Lotus Theory discusses cannabinoid therapeutics, trauma, and how perception has such a powerful impact, changing post-traumatic stress disorder in your mind to post-traumatic growth. And from there, the development of positively processing perception because of my perception shift of cannabis.
Nice. Excellent. Thank you, Nurse Nique. I'm going to just tell you, your work with positively processing perception has completely 100% changed my life and the lives of nurses that when you're doing this. So cannot wait for you to get back to this. Truly, I wouldn't have driven cross country in January if it wasn't for the work of P3. So
thank you,
sister. All right, here we go. Sweet Elisabeth.
Hey.
So what is your work in the cannabis space, and how has your perception changed?
Well, I found cannabis much like all of you, just for medical needs initially, but it changed my life. Once I was able to take CBD internally and start to erode the inflammation in my body, I was able to heal. And once I could heal myself, I knew I needed to help others. And I was working in healthcare at Anthem Blue Cross. So fast forwarded, I need to write programs and training manuals so that I could get other practitioners in healthcare communities and insurance companies and everybody trained on cannabis therapeutics and how it might be a game changer in healthcare. So for me, I'm trying to change the perception from going from it's a street drug for me all the way to how do we change the paradigm of healthcare? Because my MBA in healthcare administration has me seeing things on what the end result could be, and then you just have to engineer that.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for all you do, and I'm honored to be your vice president of nursing.
Yes, couldn't live without you. All right.
So yeah.
Well, and how about you? Answer the question yourself.
Well, there you go. Well, if you haven't heard my story, I'll try to bottom line it because I can get long-winded.
30 seconds.
30, the commercial. But cannabis saved my life. Psychedelics got me living again. Positively processing perception helped me to put it all together. So there's the three things right there. And so my perception has changed over the course of the years because when I started off, I was plagued with stigma. I was scared. I was afraid. The more I delved into the plant, into the science and learned and was able to heal and to work with patients, my perception changed to if I am truly going to be effective, I need to come out of the cannabis closet and I need to be real. I need to be authentic and I need to share my story and the stories of others because it is through that storytelling and that empathy and the kindness and the compassion and people being able to share their experiences, it's going to help others. And so one of the things, my perception that has changed too, and just in a small way, and it's hard for some people, has to do with inhalation. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was afraid of what people would think, what they would think. Who's they? Those are the thoughts in my head, the chatterbox about inhalation. So my perception around inhalation has changed because it was the first way that it actually gave me immediate relief. It was the first way that got rid of the suicidality that I had in regards to the chronic illnesses. And it's the way that I enjoy it. So why not share it? So my perception around inhalation has changed and I'm a stigma fader when it comes to that. There's an appropriate way to use cannabis. And the best way to use it is the way that works best for you. And so that's how my perception has changed. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah. So anyways, the second question, and this is going to get it where we get really juicy. So we're going to be talking about LGBTQ, pride, and cannabis. So the topic of perception. So my next question has to do with perception. Why is the topic of perception important to you when it comes to the LGBTQ theme and pride? And we'll start again with Josh.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of intersections between the queer community and the cannabis community. I think it's both marginalized communities, for different reasons, obviously, but, being gay and cannabis, and then, people that are, people of color and gay and cannabis. So there's so many intersections that we meet. And I think that there are a lot of, like I said, crossover there. And I think that, perception is such an interesting just concept in general, because, you can stand next to someone and watch something happen. And then at the end of that experience, what you perceived happen versus what they perceived happen can be completely different. And you both saw the same thing and neither one of you are like lying, but you have a totally different, point of view of it. So I think that, like I said, being in the queer community, although we've had a lot of evolution in the acceptance and normality, I guess you will say, of our community. I was reading some kind of statistics the other day that said, our community has kind of evolved as far as acceptance in the past decade, more than any other, community over time that was marginalized, that kind of became to be less and less marginalized. So it's great. Obviously, we have a long way to go still, but to see more acceptance and to see more representation really makes a difference. And I've done a lot of these like queer and cannabis like articles and features and interviews. And at first I got to tell you, I was kind of like, well, what does one have to do with the other? You know what I mean? Like, what does that part of my life have to do with, the professional part of my life? But after doing a couple of them, I really had gotten some feedback from other queer individuals that, you know, and we're talking about like, you know, I believe the first one was in Forbes and then maybe Entrepreneur, you know, so it's kind of like I had a little bit of motivation to say, okay, maybe we could do an article about it. But when you get reached out to by people after doing something like that, that are like, you know, that's really resonated with me. You know, I'm a queer person. I never really considered the cannabis industry as a career, but I love, you know, the plant. So it's like being a representation for others to see that they're not perceiving our industry as something that it's not. Because even getting into the industry myself back in, like I said, 2015, I had a, you know, actual conversation with myself and was like, you know, because you guys know me, you can't really see me right now, but I have the flashy shoes and, you know, the bags, and you can see me from a mile away, and I'm very outgoing and, you know, love my community and my friends. And, you know, going into it, I kind of was like, should I tone myself down to be this like cannabis entrepreneur? This is this whole new, you know, emerging, budding industry. And I just decided to lead with authenticity and be who I am. And I feel like that has been my biggest, you know, tool in my tool belt, is just my authenticity. And, you know, it's made me not just be successful in business, but also foster some of the best friendships and relationships that are not just work related, but are, you know, part of my heart and my life now.
Nice. Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Can I just ask Josh, Josh, could you just define queer? Because maybe not everybody listening understands what queer is, or their perception of queer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I am also ever evolving and learning myself. So, you know, my interpretation of queer is anyone that is, you know, unique in a way to where they don't identify as just heteronormative. So, and, you know, I could be wrong here too. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of debate and different opinions, but from what I understand and what I kind of believe is, you know, anyone that falls under the spectrum of the rainbow, you know, we have the LGBTQIA plus 7, 2, 3, 4, 5 now. So it's, you know, anyone, I think that in my opinion, anyone that falls under that. But also, I think it could be a lot of different things to different people, because I feel like I know also the people that identify as, you know, straight, that also identify with the queer, you know,
the queer vibe.
The queer vibe, exactly. Well,
I'll have to say, you know, I forwarded a video to Nique, and it was very, very interesting about the she, her, hers, he, him, hers,
pronouns,
they, them, theirs. And it was just very interesting just to even talk about that. And also, Nique, when we were at Patients Out of Time, we went to an event where there was someone that was hurt. They had overconsumed, and the medics came and they didn't know how to identify this individual, right? Nique, do you remember that?
Yes, and biologically it was a male, but she was transgender, so she was either she or they. So at the very least, with respect, first start with they, because they were too gone to even be able to converse with us, but they had a friend there. So when somebody is in that state and they're already in a state of trauma, never mind over consuming, right? You don't want to trigger them just by their pronoun. And that's why the perception of this conversation is so important.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's been such an evolution, you know, even, you know, like I mentioned, like I can't exactly remember what I was referencing, but about, like I said, over the past decade, how there's just been, you know, this wave of kind of normality and acceptance, not by all, you know what I mean, but by, you know, the large majority. And I think it might have tied in with like the gay marriage fight and how, you know, that was going state by state. And then Utah was like, no, we're not going to do it. And then they're like, well, we're going to do it federally. So I think it's, you know, it all ties in together with our history. But, you know, this generation, even, you know, and I like to think of myself as a young person. I'm 36. So I still remember being in high school back in like the early 2000s, like 2003 is when I graduated. And, you know, it wasn't like popular or cool to be, you know, any of these things that we're talking about right now. And I feel like we are seeing a lot more acceptance to where it's almost is a lot more accepted and is almost like the opposite of what, you know, and then I say my experience, but then you go back 20 years before me and 20 years before that. And, one thing I will say is for this generation and any person that's part of a community that's a marginalized or has been marginalized community like cannabis, and the LGBTQ plus community, is to know your history. You know what I mean? Like if you are, 22 years old and you're just really happy and you're, living your life, and say you're, non-binary or they, them, or whatever the case may be. I love that. And I support everybody and what they want to do, but like know what Stonewall is, know what the people that were 40, 50 years older than you did and how dangerous it was. And, also know around the world, like know that what you have is lucky to have that here, because there are so many places around the world where it's not okay. And you would actually fear for your life for being who you are. So, like I said, it's definitely been an evolution. And I think having a conversation like this is really great.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. All right. Nurse Nique. Perception. Perception, you're amazing. Perception coach. We know why it's important, but our viewers don't. In regards to this topic, in regards to LGBTQ, queer, gay, pride, why is the topic of perception important to you?
I think as a psychiatric nurse working in the inpatient locked units and adding after a pandemic and watching the rates of suicidality and suicide attempts increase and so much more, that everybody coming in has gone through some type of trauma. First of all, and everybody that's coming in just wants to be loved. So if you feel better about yourself as a they, then who am I to judge you and say that you cannot be a they? Because my perception of they is wrong. To me, the perception of that is not right.
Yeah. All right, Nique.
Well,
and we're gonna get to Elisabeth.
Okay. Well, for me, I'm coming fresh off a Pride weekend, right? So we spent last weekend in San Diego for Sherri's first Pride ever. We actually snuck into the parade and did YMCA with that whole contingent with about 80 other people. And it was the most amazing energy ever, and I'm thinking about, how grateful I am to be able to be there. I'm at 300,000 people. And there was plenty of cannabis. And you could always think about, cannabis and gay rights also intertwining, because they really, we wouldn't have medicinal cannabis in California if it wasn't for 1996 and Dennis Perone and the Brownie Mary Democrats and getting these initiatives, right? So
I always say we wouldn't have cannabis at all. So yes, we're medical, but we wouldn't have anything we have now and all this corporate shit we have going on. None of it would exist without those people you're talking about right now.
Right. Yeah. So we have to pay homage and honor to them, and so, I relish what I do for a living now and the opportunity we all share in this industry, but also, just being part of both communities and being able to always be sort of an ambassador to always make sure, it is funny you mentioned Stonewall, because I made Sherri watch a video Friday night about that. And it really the origination of Pride and what this really means, not just a party in the street, right? But it's just a beautiful time.
Yep.
And Elisabeth, because you are older than Josh, as am I.
Yeah, 56. So I got 20 years on you.
Yeah, and I'm 54. So I have almost, 20 years on Josh. Is that so when you were first in the queer community, did you use pronouns, and how do you feel about using those pronouns now, Elisabeth?
No, never. No, I've always just been Elisabeth or she. It was fine, and but it's interesting. I first came out in like 1985.
Year I was born.
Well, no. Wait, what did you say?
I said that's the year I was born.
Wow. But I was ostracized from my family, right? And after about it was about 12 years, relationship broke up. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try and go back to men because it's easier. Ended up getting married and stayed married for 15 years until he died. And then I'm like, well, I got that choice back. And, you know, the past 10 years, I've just been single, you know, but things are changing. So, you know, I couldn't be happier today, but you know what, we're all evolving. We're all a project, right? I'm like a science project. I'm underway all the time. And that's the beauty of life, right? It really is.
Yeah. And, you know, you say, you know, your experience with your family and how hard that was. And, you know, I think that, you know, not to like be misunderstood by the listeners of what I said before, is like, yes, it's more accepted and yes, it's more mainstream, but there are still plenty of young people that are going through that same experience of losing family. And, you know, more times than not, especially in the Black community, a lot of people don't think about it, but it's even more taboo for gay men and even lesbians in the Black community. And, you know, there can be a lot of, you know, family issues there. A lot of my friends have dealt with things, and, you know, more times than not, I think with time can heal a lot. So a lot of times, you know, eventually families can mend. And, you know, my dad's a pastor. So like I went through my own process, you know what I mean? Like my journey, you know, I knew kind of what was going on with me through high school, but like I said before, it wasn't really for me. You know, I enjoyed kind of, you know, being popular and having friends and all that stuff. So I was like not pushing that. So for me, I really didn't explore that part of myself much until after high school. So, you know, you're talking 17, 18, 19 years old. So, you know, it was a process. Like I was never, you know, completely shunned or pushed out, but, you know, the life that I was, you know, not deciding to live, but deciding to honor my truth and live, did not line up with what, you know, I was raised in and what, you know, at the time, you know, my family believed. But like I said, with time and love and, you know, getting to know each other again, you know what I mean, as this person and this you know, life that I'm living, it's I couldn't be closer with my family. And, you know, both my parents use cannabis too. So they, you know, imagine that.
Yeah. Well, they're open, but you know what? We still have to remain vigilant because, you know, it's like 2015 gay marriage was allowed, right? You think you can stop worrying, but now, you know, with some of our civil rights and liberties at threat, you always have to maintain activism.
Oh,
just
absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
And, you know, Josh, you brought a good point when you brought in, you know, the Black community as well, because I was at the research lab today and there's, I work with diversity there as well. And one of the research assistants is from Nepal. And I told him what I was doing tonight and asked them a few questions in the lab. And he said he came to the States when he was a young boy at school. And in Nepal, it's not discussed. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exist, but it's suppressed so deeply that it's just not discussed.
Yep.
And when he came to the States, he said boys, men in Nepal touch, hug, you know, hold hands. Mm-hmm. That's accepted in their culture. He said when he came to the States and he went to school, he went to grab a boy's hand. And the boy said to him, "Get away from me. What are you, gay?"
Yeah.
And he said, that stuck with me. Like my whole, like he's 23 now.
Yeah.
I remember that vividly and trying to understand, and even different countries and ethnicities. What does a man mean? Never mind the whole sexuality aspect of it. So he said how he felt like it was so taboo, like gay. So it was very interesting to listen to that because of the perception of even your ethnicity, your culture, your heritage.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, Nique, I think we should get into it, right? I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to really do an exercise on perception. How do we positively process perception around difficult topics? So will you tell us about your work at Positively Processing Perception, why you developed it, and this particular exercise that we're going to do? Because I know you said it's something different than we've done before, but I'm excited. So I want to let you get started.
So I developed Positively Processing Perception by mistake, because at 50, I'm 54, so probably around 48, 50, started to understand more about my own toxic behaviors and this history of repeating itself and doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, which is insanity. So dealing with my own mental health issues and being stigmatized for being mentally ill, I started to take a deep dive with my journey in cannabis and perception about, okay, what is mental illness and what does mental illness mean to me? And I started to look at my toxic behaviors. And when I started to see patterns in my own behaviors and started to really think about triggers and why I was behaving the way I was behaving, and who was I with when those triggers happened, not in the present, but in my mind, in my flashbacks, in my thoughts, and how could I change my perception of those things, because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So one thing that we don't teach either is that when you have PTSD, when you have complex PTSD, you're addicted to the pain. Your body actually has different chemical reactions when you're triggered to the trauma and the flashbacks, and you go into a state of hyperexcitability. So you have to learn how to control those negative thoughts, feelings, behaviors, so that way you can positively shift and get out of your own way. So that's why I started Positively Processing Perception, because I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired. Just like you hear a drug user say, just like you hear an alcoholic say, just like you hear a sex addict say, you know, I got to change my life if I want a different outcome.
How do you get people to develop the initial awareness, right? Because you have to start there. How do you get them to turn on consciousness?
What happens is I'm seeing it in people that are in crisis, right? So I've been using this in the inpatient psych units, and they're coming in and they're in crisis. So somebody goes to have a psychotic moment, whether they're going to cut themselves or they're a schizophrenic who's paranoid and they're having all these thoughts and behaviors. The first thing I do is I want to make eye contact with you. If I can at least get you to look into my eyes, I've built therapeutic trust and rapport right there, which is already going to change your perception of me because I care. You looking at me in your eyes tells me that you care, and that's the first step in changing the mental health system that's broken right now. With that, you can start the process of positively processing perception.
Yeah, it takes that almost humbling moment of, wow, okay, but here's the thing. If you recognize that you can be aware, you can be conscious, you can tune in, tap in, then you can take responsibility and you can start change, right? You can start positive change. You can start that PTS growth, right? And right, that's what it's all about. Yeah, totally.
But the thing is that sometimes subconsciously you're doing it, you just consciously are not aware of it yet because you haven't gotten to that level. So it's just like cannabis and planting that seed, just like the LGBT community and planting this conversation, the seeds of love, right? Because we're going to soon get into the perception of love. And that's how we say, this is what we have to do. You start planting those seeds. So just the first time I do this with you, I only might get eye contact from you, and I might only get eye contact from you for 2 seconds. But at least I was there. And then the more that you do it, the more that you build respect, the more that you build trust. Because let's face it, trust and respect isn't given, it's earned. So how much are you willing to invest in me to show me that you can do that? And at the end of this, with positively processing perception in cannabis, you realize that I don't need it from you. I need it from me. So once you understand to positively process your own perceptions of your own toxic behaviors, then you can start to turn it into love.
Do you ever find like you come across people that are almost subconsciously like self-sabotaging, like they almost subconsciously enjoy wallowing in the sorrow and like subconsciously choose to perceive things? Like, do you have any like tips or tricks, or how do you deal with like trying to help switch that automatic like self-sabotage in people's minds, because they want to get better but they're self-sabotaging themselves subconsciously, I'd imagine?
I think the first thing, Josh, is acknowledging and making them understand that what's happening, right? And the first thing you got to do is that pause. So my process that I use is please stop, right? But it's not for you to stop, it's for me to stop. It's for me to stop what's going on in my head. So if I can at least get them to like please listen to me, please just look at me, pause, hold on, right? If I can get them to engage in that first few seconds and stay with it and keep that eye contact, as soon as you lose eye contact, you're done for the day.
Yeah.
Right? Just let it go. Because especially in somebody who's psychotic, schizophrenia, even drug-related psychosis, if they can't look you in the eyes, they will assault you.
Yeah.
That's just been my own data and research. If they cannot look you in the eye, male or female, they will assault you. So whether it's a severe client like that or somebody that's coming in for you for therapy, just know you can gauge what somebody can understand by their eyes.
Good. Very good.
Sorry, I'm losing some of my light here.
Right. So Nique, tell us about this exercise that we're going to start.
Okay, so tonight is about the LGBT community, and tonight is about the perception of love. So I chose an image that I would like Sherri to put up for everyone. And I want you to take a look at the image. And what we do with positively processing perception is, what's the first thing that's triggered to you when you see that image? And think about that. So as you look at it, and don't say anything out loud because we're going to share differently. And I'm just going to turn a light on. I'll be right back.
So for the people that are just tuning in, we're doing an exercise. Nurse Nique, the perception coach from Positively Processing Perception, is we put up an image and we're taking a peek at it. And what we all want you to do is just to think about, how does it make you feel? What thoughts come into your head?
So perception is based on what you see, hear, feel, touch, different sensory things. So think about that when you're looking at this picture. What do you see? What do you feel? What if you touched? Those type of things. And I would like to start by asking Elisabeth what her perception of this image is.
Well, initially, all I saw was the gentleman with the beard and the glasses and the ear. Looks a little like Freud or something like that. And then Sherri's like, "Do you see the woman?" And I said, "No." And then I looked again, and then I said, "Okay, yeah." So, but I just immediately, would have just said, "Okay, that's a man," and looked away. Yeah.
Okay. And Josh, what did you see in that image?
I don't know why, but like I got like a negative vibe like from it. So weird. But like when I first looked at it, I focused on the very top of his head, where you could see the woman's head kind of just like looking like in a crater. So like I don't know, like I think that it was just initial where my first eye went to gave me like a, I don't know, negative vibe.
And Elisabeth, how did it make you feel?
Well, I did see that, and I thought that was some kind of a growth, and I felt sorry for the guy because that's some kind of a malignancy, but I still looked away and didn't recognize what it was.
Okay, let me say, hold on to that word that she said, her perception and malignancy. Just put that in your back pocket. We're going to talk about that. So, and Sherri.
All right, you guys, I'm just going to say it like it is. First thing I saw was the muff. I was like, what? And then I was trying to figure out, I saw the woman right away.
Shocking.
Right away. And then I was trying to figure out the body parts of the woman and how they made it into the man. And when I saw it, I got silly. I thought it was because I knew the exercise that we were doing, and I'm like, I'm going to have to tell her the first thing that I saw, which was, it looked like pubic hairs, right there. And
well,
that was my
perspective. Your glasses be much stronger than mine. I don't see those details. Yeah. I do after a period of time, though. Right. So here we are, 3 different people, 3 different backgrounds, and 3 different perceptions of this same image. And I just want to let you all know that this is Sigmund Freud. And the quote to this image is, "What's always on a man's mind."
Oh. Wow. Unless they're LGBTQ, then maybe
exactly. So Josh, that's why another reason why I wanted to talk about this, because when we grow up, our perceptions of who we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to look up to and who we're supposed to follow and who puts those labels on us. And as Sherri said in the beginning, who are they? Yeah. So Sigmund Freud, everybody or almost everybody or somebody knows somebody who knows who Freud is, right? And in the world of psychiatry and psychology, Freud is. So if the perception of this is that's always on a man's mind, and you're taught that in a society by somebody that the psychiatric community is supposed to look up to, and this is what we tell people and share with people, how do you change the perception that it's supposed to be something different? And if a man doesn't have a woman on his mind like that sexually, then is he therefore a man, and what constitutes a real man?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there, obviously. But, I think toxic masculinity comes to mind, like this idea of like you said, what is a man? What is being masculine? And I think that really everyone is just, got to figure it out on their own. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's levels of, femininity to masculinity. And I think that, I think I think one of the blessings of being part of this community is that I think no matter who you are, what you identify with, at least for me, I can't speak for anyone else, I really feel that I embody both the femininity and the masculinity of the universe. And I think that being able to balance both of those things really almost gives you more power and more understanding and insight into the universe. And I think that, yes, we have to change perceptions, but I'm also a firm believer in, paving our own way. So like if people want to think a certain way, like, as it's like everyone's going to think a little differently. So I think that there's, people that are worth spending time to change minds, but I think there's a group of people for certain things like racism and the kind of thing we're talking about right now are probably never going to change their minds. And it's like, how some people say with certain terrible things in the world like racism and homophobia and sexism. And, it's kind of a terrible joke, but they say, oh, well, a bunch of old people have to die before we can actually erase racism and certain things because it is generational. And, I guess the good thing in that is that it's getting a little less and less each time, even no matter how slow it may feel. But yeah.
On that note, I have some stats in my head from last week. We did a webcast, right? And talking about generations, right? So baby boomers, 3% self-identify as LGBT. Gen Z, it's 20%. 20%. Right. So what happened to the 17%? Right. Like how many people, and at 56, I'm on the tail end of baby boomers. Right. I'm the very last year. And it's really interesting because it's always been something that's been highly stigmatized. So it's been a generational thing. And with respect to cannabis, the workforce is about 14% LGBT when normal workplaces are 7%.
Wow.
So
cannabis is double the LGBT representation.
Yep. And the other thing I'd like to, when we did this podcast, I was looking at mental health and mental wellness. And in the first 5 years of someone coming out, there's a 60% chance that they're going to attempt suicide. That's what the statistics showed. And that's really, really concerning. Mm-hmm. And as a clinician, as a nurse, it brings me back to what, Nique, the National Council State Boards of Nursing. The nurse shall not judge the patient in regards to the preferred method of treatment. And that also includes their preference to gender and sexual orientation. So we need to incorporate that 6 NCSBN, the National Council State Boards of Nursing, is the nursing regulatory board that puts on the exam. So, they speak about judgment in there, right? And as human beings, we are judging machines, good, bad, neutral, right? It's just how we are. So you think about judgment kills the vibe. It creates bias, right? It places limitations on the full impact of healing for both patients and the clinician, right? So how do we do that? How do we work with that? We have to examine our biases, right? And what is a bias? It's the tendency to believe that some people, ideas are better than others, which usually results in treating people unfairly, right? Bias is another form of prejudice, either in favor or against a person, thing, or idea. And it does impede clear, objective thinking. And it does fuel what? Anger, fear, anxiety. We can't, our emotions, when we don't understand something, we have to give meaning to it. When we give meaning to it, what do? We create a story in our head, right? And so for me, it's really, really important in this space as a nurse to really look at how we approach and take care of patients. Just like Nique said, that eye contact, that connection, what's important to that patient? That patient wants to be seen, heard, and loved. They're suffering, right? And what do we do as nurses? We're here to relieve suffering and improve quality of life in whatever way, shape, or form that we can. Because as clinicians here, specifically cannabis clinicians, and as nurses, nurse patients, we've been on the other side of the bed and we truly see, know, and understand what people need now in this space. And so it's really, really important to me. And as I started to really look at this, Dr. Hugh Bleshing's book, The Cannabis Health Index, he talks about overcoming biases and prejudices. And it's about acknowledging, just like Nique said, acknowledging, having the awareness, accepting our humanity, understanding. And what does understanding mean? It means doing the work, taking a look, taking responsibility, own the bias, own your prejudice. What is your trigger around that? Commit and accept that your starting point is right here, right now, and commit to change. And when we change, we grow. And when we grow, it's an action work. And when we grow, we heal. And with healing comes evolving. And so he mentions about evolving, and evolving is about intention into your actions, intention into how you work with yourself and others. And that is truly about growing in health. Mm-hmm. So Nique, this is so powerful. Really, really great image, really great topic. I'm honored that you both, came in here to share.
Yeah, and if you're struggling with any of these issues, right, use some cannabis, right? Because cannabis nurtures that endocannabinoid system, helps to release some of those aversive thoughts and memories, and and help you move on and see things from both sides, right? When I use cannabinoids, I can see things a little bit more balanced rather than, one way or the other, trying to get out of the extremes that and like all of us tend to get into, where we think one way or another because we're all conditioned, right? Yeah. And so you have to break free from that.
Well, and Nique, we did a couple of perception exercises where you could feel two things at the same time, right? Because
the duality of perception is exactly what I've thought of when Josh was talking about feeling both. He was connected to his male and feminine side, and that's the other part that cannabis and perception helps us get to, is that you don't know love if you don't know hate. You don't know the female if you don't know the male. You don't know tragedy if you haven't experienced the height of ecstasy almost, and whatever that is to you. So instead of being afraid of understanding both sides, the light and the darkness, embrace it, because that's how you become whole. And that's how you help to change your perception, because you're going to continue to be triggered. You're going to continue to have moments where it's not going to work. But it's in that very time that you can sit with the duality of perception and say, okay, the last time I felt like this, I used to do this. But I know where that takes me and I know what that does to me. So now I'm going to sit right here and pause. Because in this pause, I might be stuck, but I know I'm not going back there. So I'm going to start to walk to the light, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'll be damned if I'm going back there again. And that's what positively processing perception is all about.
Wow. Good stuff. Wow. Good stuff. Wow.
Be in the present.
Be in the present. Yeah. The present is the present.
I have a question for you guys, if we still have time, though.
Yes. Plenty of time.
Okay, so the perception of love, another piece that I wanted to touch, that I said that I started, asking around at the lab today. So I would like to start to ask all of you, and then I will kind of share what the perception of this whole exercise did for me, and how it actually helped to heal one of my intense triggers about love. So Sherri, why don't we start with you this time? And what is the perception of love? What does that mean to you?
The perception of love to me is just someone, people, places, things, just being me, authentically me, seen, heard, appreciated, loved, for just being me. And it's not the good me, not the bad me. It's all of me, all of what encompasses Sherri. So that's how, acceptance, nurturing, kindness, compassion, empathy, looking, for the person that I love. I want the best for them. I want the best for them. I want them to be living their best lives. And so how do I do that? I have to live mine. So in order for me to love anyone, I have to love myself. And some of loving myself means looking at things that are icky and that don't feel good. And this is where positively processing perception has come in and has helped me to love those aspects of myself that I'm afraid of, that I'm embarrassed of, that I'm ashamed of, and that I don't want anyone to know. So being able to go in and do that work with positively processing perception tools has allowed me to step into a space of, I love myself, and now I'm going to attract that great love into my life with the person that has done the work that I've done. And that's what it means to me.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Elisabeth, what is the perception of love to you?
It's for me, it's about peace. It's that safe space. It started with self-love, and I've done a lot of work ever since Warren left. It's reorienting myself to spirit and how to walk with that one love and purpose, right? Love to me is also purpose. It's my work. It's like my work is never work because there's so much purpose behind it. Loving others is now, evolving as well as I went from so many years alone to now being partnered. Love to me is joy. It's peace and it's joy. And that's it really is all that we need to live for. Just love, just being with love, peace, and joy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And Josh, what is your perception of love?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, as cliche as it may be, you have to truly love yourself before you can, love others correctly. I'll say at least. And I just think that love is, understanding and acceptance and comfortability and home, love feels like home.
Right.
Or should.
Right. And whatever home is to you.
Yep.
So I asked around the office today, and somebody said to me, the absence of loneliness. So I thought that was pretty deep. I never looked at it like that, but it was interesting how it inspired me to think about love in a whole different perception. Yeah. Somebody else said sacrifice. And that
not always cupcakes and rainbows.
Exactly. Right. Right. So that if you truly love even yourself, you have to make sacrifices.
Well, like you said earlier, to know to love is to know to hate. And, you can have both in one sometimes,
Yes. Somebody else said trust.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said her first thought was my husband. And then she said, and my children. And two people that answered this question both said, wow, that's a really deep question. That's really hard to answer.
Wow.
So
they didn't.
Exactly. So I just want to take my perception of Sigmund Freud in that image, how it was when I first thought of this, and the perception of it today. And what happened to me after doing some homework, because yes, Sherri, I do homework now. Instead of going on the fly, I wanted to look deeper into this to understand it from a different perception than just my own before we did the show. And what I found was, for me, when I first looked at this, I thought love equaled sex. I started to pause after today when I left the lab, and I couldn't understand why nobody looked at love as sex. I was very, very surprised that nobody said, oh, love equals sex. And my perception when we were asked to do this podcast on the LGBT community and such, my first thoughts of it all was sex. So then I looked a little bit deeper on my drive home, and I took my dog out for a walk, and I was just trying to really think of wow, I'm really messed up, but but why? And I realized that when I was 13, I was taught and had the discussion with someone who shared with me what the birds and the bees were and what sex was. And they were crying while they were telling me. And they were telling me that I was going to get my period and what that was, and that I could possibly be having sex, or eventually I would have sex, but sex is for when you're married, and when you love somebody, that's when you have sex. And I was severely raped and abused for most of my life by my father, and sex is dirty and men are dirty and you're going to be a woman. And they left and said, never talk about this. So here I am at 54, And I was walking around today thinking deeply, wow, we're so impressionable. Words are so powerful. I've been through domestic abuse, and I've said to people, I'd rather be punched in the face than somebody call me names. And it's so true. And we do it to the kids, and we do it to each other, and we do it as nurses, and we do it in the LGBT community. We do it in the Black community, the Latino community, the Mexican, you name it. We're doing it to each other in some sort of way. And I changed my perception today. And I said, love is a feeling. And love is something that I carry inside now. And I've learned to love both sides of me, and I don't need to get it from anybody else anymore. So that's what positively processing perception has the potential to do when you work through it. And if you do it by yourself, by having these conversations and these moments, looking at yourself in a mirror and doing mirror therapy, because you take away that other person, because sometimes you feel very vulnerable and afraid and scared to talk to somebody about this stuff. But when you look at yourself in the mirror, your eyes are your windows to your soul, and you can't lie to yourself anymore. So cry and think and pause. So I'll end this part of our perception journey with please stop. And if you all would like to try this with me, the first thing that you want to do for P is pause. And what we do is we squeeze our finger and our thumb together. And we take a deep breath in through our nose. Pull it all the way down to your pelvis. Hold it there for 3 to 5 seconds and slowly breathe it out of your mouth. You want to continue breathing like this while you L for listen. Listen for what's going on in your mind. What triggered you? When was the last time you felt this? Who were you with? How old were you? E is for exhale, to remind you to continue breathing while you're doing this. The A is for accept. Accept where you are right now. There's nothing you can do about it. S is to silence. Silence all those thoughts in your head, those racing thoughts, those images, everything that feels crazy. And E is to empower. Empower you to get through your trauma and learn to love who you are authentically. And that's how we positively process perception.
Nurse Nique, that was so beautiful.
Very powerful.
And, yeah, really powerful. I mean, it is the please stop. It's about me stopping and going in. It's about going in and doing the inner work, right? In order to see the world in a different way, you have to go in and see it, your internal world differently. So please stop. Powerful. And Nurse Nique Pichette is going to be presenting. I want to give a big shout out and a plug to the Cannabis Nurses Network.
Oh.
A lot of us cannabis nurses are going to be presenting there. Nique, what are you going to be presenting on? You're going to have an amazing topic.
I am going to be presenting on cannabis use disorder and eliminating the light in the darkness, because I'm seeing an awful lot of patients in the psych community being diagnosed with cannabis use disorder. Yet, where's the knowledge of cannabinoid therapeutics? Where's the knowledge of the endocannabinoid system? And positive THC does not equate to cannabis use disorder. Now, in the doctoral program and in the world of medicine, I had to take a different spin on that and developing a tool to appropriately diagnose cannabis use disorder. So I've learned to change the perception into a positive so I can try to get providers to understand and change the stigma that they're placing on their patients.
Wow. Good work. Good work. I cannot wait to hear you speak. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Sherri, you'll be speaking there as well. And Mack, you too, correct?
No, I don't have a gig this year.
I'm sorry.
She's going to have a slide. I'm going to put her in one of my slides.
Okay.
Yeah, which is going to be cool. Yeah, I'm actually presenting. Interesting enough, it has a lot to do with my high hope, inspiration, growth, and healing. High science. Spirituality is the root of cannabis care. The art and science of nursing, a return to love. So that's going to be my theme. It's going to cover just a little bit of perception, but a lot about nursing theory, the art and science of nursing. And we're going to cover a lot of cognitive dissonance and how we can work with biases and prejudices and really come forth and take care of our patients effectively as it relates to the 6th National Council Staples of Nursing, as the nurse shall not judge the patient. So really, really excited to be presenting with my cannabis sisters, my cannabis soul sisters. Big thank you to Heather for putting this on. Really going to be an amazing thing. She's doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes to make this happen, and it is planning a very special day for all of the nurses that are speaking. So really looking forward to that. So thank you, Nurse Heather.
Yeah, I cannot wait to attend and to be on your arm, and then to take all of you fine ladies to the beach, because I'm the resident San Diegan.
It's going to be great. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to end the show with, I'm very, very grateful. It's my birthday today. And I just want to say thank you. And really, what a gift to be here, to be part of the cannabis community and to be part of the LGBTQ community. Yeah, you heard it from me. I crossed that rainbow bridge, and I am loud and I am proud, and I completely 100% marched and did the YMCA and went live. And literally, I'm here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and to live your best life, and whatever that looks. So if you're new out there to cannabis, if you're new out there and you're not sure about what your gender is or how you in the world, just know you're not alone. I'm stepping into this world of not knowing, and guess what? I jumped out of a plane 2 years ago, and I'm going to continue to jump into life, because in order to evolve in life, you need to get involved. And so I'm just going to end with a quick little video, and remember what it's all about, everyone. It is truly about living your best life and helping others do the same. And I'm going to show you guys a quick little 1-minute video of me jumping out of a plane.
Love you. Thank you. All right.
Guys, all I want to say is I love you all so much. Thank you so much. It's all about living your best life and helping others do the same. We'll see you next week.
God bless.
Thank you.